All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa. And we are here today to talk about the weirdest, wackiest Christmas movie I think I've ever seen.
This movie is something, man. Yeah. Weird, wacky. It's a little bit of all of it. And we are going to be talking about Anna and the Apocalypse, a movie that is that rare trinity of Christmas movie, horror movie, and musical. So it's got a little bit of everything. And yeah, man, it's wild.
It really is. I think that this is the most niche movie that we've covered here. I think it's probably the most niche movie we're ever going to cover.
I think so.
Because I think the only one that comes close is Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it has such a cult following that like you can barely call it niche.
Right.
You know, like maybe it was back in the 70s, but it isn't anymore. Because like you said, it's a horror comedy,
right?
With zombies,
but
it's also a musical, and it's also a Christmas movie. Like this is who is the target audience? I have to think about this. I watched this one with my sister Lisa, guest on the show, and she and I turned to each other like maybe 5 minutes into this movie. We said, us two sitting in this room right now, these are the only two people that we can think of that they thought of
right
when they said, let's make this movie.
Yeah, this movie, to accurately describe this movie, I need you to imagine that Shaun of the Dead took La La Land out to dinner, and after a couple drinks, there was a little bit of an unholy union there, and the baby that was born on Christmas Day was Anna and the Apocalypse, because there's no other way to describe this, because it's not just a musical in the fact that, I mean, it's an actual musical with song and dance numbers. It's not just there are great songs playing, which happens a lot. No. This is a musical in the fact that the characters are singing and dancing, and it is choreographed, and it's just it's wild the way this whole thing came together. As I was watching it, you had texted me when you watched it the day before me, and you were like, this is a very niche movie. I am that audience. So I'm watching it last night, and I get like 15 minutes in, and there is a pinpoint where the Venn diagrams included in this movie overlap. And I mean, they threaded the needle with this movie, man.
They really did. So I can't imagine how many people I know would want to see this movie, because you know what it is right from the beginning. I remember seeing the trailer for this back in 2018, I think it was, and thinking this looks weird and like my kind of weird. You know, like some people are really into John Waters. I mean, you know, because you're a man of taste. And then like some people are really into Quentin Tarantino. Like they really found like an audience for this. The thing is, the audience is probably like it can probably fit in my house. My house isn't very big, you know. So the thing is, I think it works really, really well. For what it is.
Yeah, man, I can't disagree. It's you know, when you look at this and everything that we're talking about is like outside of the, like, you know, it's the subgenre of zombie film within horror. Okay, those two things go together. But then everything else, it's all, that space where Christmas movies and horror movies overlap. That's big. That spot where horror movies and musical intersect is even lower.
Yeah.
And so it's so bizarre to talk about what seem like so drastically different genres, and that this movie blends them all, and it does it pretty seamlessly. I never felt like anything was super shoehorned in. There were some great moments that reminded you that it was horror comedy. But they also, in a very Shaun of the Dead-esque way, they balanced all of the horror comedy with some genuinely touching moments, some stuff that would fit into any zombie movie, no matter how serious it is. There are scenes from this that fit right into any Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, all of those things. There are scenes in this that you slide right in there, and they make sense in those situations too. But then there's also a group of high school kids, pounding on lunchroom tables, singing about no Hollywood endings. It's so weird, and yet it all worked. It all made sense. It all fit together. I believed that it was a well-made movie. I didn't feel like it was just something that somebody threw together on a dare. It felt like it was done purposefully and great.
The thing about this is that movies like this are made so infrequently because it's clearly a passion project.
Right.
This is something that someone had wanted to make for a long time. And the problem with movies like that is that so often you can't secure funding for them.
Right.
And so they're made on shoestring budgets, and then they don't end up being very good, unfortunately. But this really made use of just about every dollar that they had, because special effects were pretty good. The acting, now I was not familiar with any of these actors, but I thought they did a pretty good job for what it was. They were campy enough when they needed to be and cheesy enough when they needed to be. And I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's strange to watch this movie, and I don't think it's strange to enjoy it as much as I did, but it was strange, kind of the roller coaster of emotions that it took us on, because as we get into looking at the story here, it's horror, it's comedy, it's musical, it's holiday. I mean, this what we have deemed the libretto, which is a musical theater term that Dave just taught me, and so we're saying that we like it, but what makes it work for you?
So I think that the story itself is one that could fit into any zombie horror movie. Right. Take out the house in the middle of nowhere that you have in Night of the Living Dead and make it a high school. Take out the mall from Dawn of the Dead and make it a high school. Take out the military complex from Day of the Dead and make it a high school. And I think that you have a very, very similar movie. You have people who are trying to live their lives as best they can, and it's really about them. It's not about the zombies. And I think that that's where zombie movies often go wrong, is that they focus so much on the zombie. Like, why are they a zombie? How do we cure the zombie?
Right.
It doesn't fucking matter, because in the end, as we've discussed like ad nauseum on the show, a movie monster is not really about that monster. The movie monster is about us. And that's what this movie is really about. It's about a group of people learning to live together, whether it's the daughter and the father who have had a strained relationship since the mom died, whether it's the best friends, where one friend wants something a little more out of the relationship than the other, whether it's the daughter whose parents don't really seem to care too much about her, like whatever that relationship is, that's always at the focal point of that scene. It's
Right.
never about like the zombies about to get you. The only reason why we care is because we care about these people, because we want them to survive. And so although the story is good, it's good because the characters are well written.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where like the story makes enough sense because they never really tell you why it is that the dead have risen.
Nope.
And I'm okay with that. And they never really address how it is that they turn into zombies. Is it when they die at all? You know, like in Night of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead, or is it that, you know, they must get bitten?
Mhm.
What are the rules? They never establish them because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
You're never really too concerned about zombies. You're concerned about where these people are going to end up. And one of the things that I loved about this movie is that the main character Anna has this idea that she's going to travel Australia when she graduates from high school. And like halfway through the movie, as she and her best friend John are talking about the state of the world, he says, well, one good thing came out of this, like you're not going to leave me.
Right.
You're not going to go travel Australia. And she kind of looks at him like, well, why can't I? You know,
Yeah.
so like the problems that people have persist, even though the world is falling around them.
Right.
And to me, that's why this movie works so well, because the songs played into their lives. It wasn't like this stark break where it was like, okay, and now's the time on, you know, and now's the time on Sprockets when we dance. You know, it wasn't that. The for, you know, little 90s SNL there for you. It was always a seamless transition from dialogue to song and back into it. And the characters behaved as if like movies and zombie movies are real within their world, which is always really interesting to me when that happens, because so often characters behave like they have never ever once heard of someone wielding a knife.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh my God, what do we do? Well, you just fucking shoot the guy, you know? That's it, done. So the characters are smart. They have good ideas, and I think that that's really what drives this movie, is that like these characters remind us of ourselves and the problems that we have. Like I have problems with my parents, and it doesn't stop me from loving my parents or them from loving me.
Right.
But there's strained relationships. Same with friends. You know, I remember having a friend that I wanted to have more than just a friendship with, and it never developing past that point, and feeling like that guy, you know, feeling like John,
Right.
where it was like, why can't this go on?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like he says, I'm discovering that the nice guy does finish last.
Right. Yeah, it's what's remarkable about the story of this movie is the reason that it works so well is because they didn't try to reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
It's always interesting, you know, as I listen back to our episodes sometimes. Yes, I listen to my own work. I guess it makes me, you know, just super narcissistic, but whatever. As I listen back to the stuff that we do, it's always funny how there are times when it's the right thing to do to reinvent the wheel, to come up with something new, to take an idea that somebody has touched on and completely flip it and spin it around. There are times when you do that and it works really, really well. Final Girls was a movie that did that very well, and we praised it for doing that very well. But there are also times when you take a movie and you take a genre stereotype and you realize that stereotypes exist for a reason often in movies. And that's because of exactly what you said. When it comes to the zombie movie, the story doesn't need to be about why the zombies are there. We don't need people who are, you know, gathering ingredients for the cure or anything like that. What we need is a movie that makes us care about the survival the people that we're watching. So what we get here is a group of friends that we see. They're all hanging out together. They get separated, and it's the classic zombie movie trope of we've got to get to our friends. We've got to get to our parents. We've got to get to safety. And that's it. It's what made 28 Days Later work. There wasn't, there was a brief little thing at the beginning of 28 Days Later, like, oh, look, PETA set these monkeys free and now we're all dying.
Right.
In this one, we got in just the truest, greatest zombie trope of all time. We get a radio broadcast at the very beginning talking about the virus. But then the movie makes us immediately aware of the fact that the virus doesn't matter because Anna turns the radio off.
It's a brilliant choice to have that happen.
Yes.
Because they're telling us, hey, don't care.
Yeah,
because we don't care. So why do you?
There's zombies now. Deal with it. Like that's and that's all you need to know. It's what, when hell is full, the dead will walk the earth. Okay, cool. Everybody who dies turns into a zombie. Let's go. Let's make a movie now, right? And they did. It was so smart to have her hear that radio broadcast and not care and just flip it off, because that's how they told the audience, this isn't the part of the movie that's important. Turn that off and listen to the fact that this dad and this daughter have a strained relationship. Listen to the fact that obviously John is into Anna and it's one-sided. Pay attention to these things. Don't worry about why the zombies are there. They're a plot device. Yeah. And it's great when you just establish that immediately. Because if you decide to try to do something new, then exactly what you were saying, you've got to write your own rules and stick to them. They just said, all right, you guys know what zombies are, right? Cool. You heard him say reanimate. All right, we're good. Now we're going to follow classic zombie rules. And like at one point, when they're fighting in the bowling alley, what do? It's just like in the movies, destroy the brain, right? And so that's what they do. And suddenly we aren't, where the zombies aren't, they're scary, but it's not the terror of the zombies that keeps you on edge. You're always wondering, is she going to get back to her dad on time? Mm-hmm. Is Chris going to get back to Gran on time? These are the things that make you want to keep watching. It's exactly what The Walking Dead eventually started doing wrong. The Walking Dead started as a show about people surviving. And then when they tried to make it more and they tried to just do all of this other stuff, and they're cramming in trying to find cures, and they're cramming in all this, societal stuff. And it just once it stops becoming about just survival of a couple of people, then you've got way too many moving parts. Yeah. The other thing about this movie that works really well story-wise is the other thing that a zombie movie always needs to do well, regardless of whether or not George Romero says it was unintentional with Night of the Living Dead. And that's, you've got the social commentary, as light as it may be, as just kind of a quick brushstroke as you may have it. There's a moment in this movie where they're in the bowling alley and they're pulling up the computer and they search for the hashtag evac selfie. And it's all these people like posing for selfies in front of zombies that are stuck behind the gates. And Steph is just scrolling through all these pictures and goes, yeah, we deserve to go extinct. That one little brief bit. It's like, okay, yeah, look at this. Look at how stupid people would actually be. All right, cool. There's your little bit of social commentary. Check that box. But they didn't try to drive it home because that's not what this movie was trying to do. It wanted us to worry whether or not they were going to make it, not just because we wanted them to live, but because we wanted to see them reunited with their loved ones. Oh, and Dave's coughing.
Yeah, sorry about
that. Right
on
on cue.
Getting over a cold. And I think that's part of, and we'll get into. Actually, I did not set up how Christmassy this was.
No, so let's just go ahead and throw it in here with talk about the story.
I think that is part of why this works so well as a Christmas movie, because I think that what's at the heart of 90% or 95%. I don't have a metric, I'm making it up. Of all good Christmas movies is that it's ultimately about family. It's
Yeah.
about, uniting with your family, reuniting with your family, getting over the bumps and bruises, accepting them, warts and all, and coming together. It's why I can continue to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles past Thanksgiving.
Love it.
Because it's such a great holiday movie, right? It's about family, it's about reunion, and that's what's at the core of this movie constantly.
Yeah.
With every character, there is I must reunite with this person.
Yep. And what's it's fun. You talk about Christmas movies. It's also funny how just this idea of putting a movie at Christmas time gives it makes that more important, because if you remove Christmas from this, it's still important that everybody get back to their families,
right?
But we all associate wanting to be with family at Christmas time. It's just funny how when you take a movie that's not a good movie. Look, I as right before this podcast, I just finished watching Fred Claus for the first time. Fred Claus is not a good movie, y'all. We're not going to review it on here because it's not a horror movie, but it is not a good movie. It is, however, a fine Christmas movie, because at the heart of it, it's about being with your family, right? So that little touch, I think that taking this movie, and this was the perfect genre of film, the zombie film, to put at Christmas time, because of the fact that the idea of reuniting your family is what makes a zombie movie great. And that's what makes a Christmas movie great. When you look at all of the Christmas movies that we love, all of them,
including Die Hard,
are about strained familial relationships, and Christmas being the perfect time to fix it, which is why Fred Claus kind of works, right? But I mean, when you look at Jingle All the Way, Gremlins, I mean, no matter where you go with all of it, it all boils down to Christmas being the perfect time to fix these problems with your family, and not just your blood family, but as we see with the characters of Anna and Nick, they
the family
are
you choose as well.
Yeah, they're repairing a relationship between the two of them that was strained because of a breakup. And there are still feelings there, and there's a lot going on, but it's the reason that Hallmark can turn out 14 of those things a year, and my Nana is going to watch them nonstop.
Yeah.
Because it's all the same story, but when you put it at the backdrop of Christmas, we just eat it up. And I'm like, I don't like the Hallmark Christmas movies, but I do love a Christmas movie because I love that element of it. Just that idea of this being the perfect time to fix those things. And the fact that Christmas is at the end of the year just adds that extra element to it. I think that if you took Christmas out of this movie, it would be fine, but I don't think that I would have liked it as much as I do.
Yeah, the Christmas element definitely, I think, helps support a lot of the thematic elements that are there. For all the reasons that you talked about. So it's almost like it's working as an amplifier to an already great guitar. As a guitarist, I often think in guitar speak, even when I shouldn't. So it's like you can play a shitty guitar and plug it into a good amp and get a decent sound. And likewise, you can play a good guitar and plug it into a shitty amp and not get as good a sound as you would before, but still get something kind of decent.
Right.
But when you got a great guitar and you plug it into a great amplifier, all that's going to happen is all of the great little nuances are going to come out. And that's what choosing the right setting for your movie is all about. And time of year is definitely one of those things. There's a reason why when the writer wants us to be sad, they set it in rain. when change is coming. They set it in the fall. These things, they're done for a reason, and I think that choosing Christmas was done purposefully and with, I think, great effect.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. I think that I almost wonder if just the idea of a zombie musical comedy is where they started, and then the Christmas element kind of got added later because they realized that, like you said, that was going to be the right amp for this movie.
It very well may have been. What I do know is that what must have been on the very front of their minds from the very beginning was our cast of players here, which is in a section I'm calling the playbill. As anyone who has been to a musical theater production will be familiar with the playbill. Lots of great information in there.
Big yellow block, name of the play, and
yeah,
and just plain text. Yeah.
And you're always happy for the person who's coming in as a substitute for the person who's just got a cold, but also kind of sad that you're not seeing the cast as intended. So we have discussed that the characters, the actors, really are the reason why this movie works so well, because the story's good, the story's there. Thematically, there's a lot of things going on here that work. But it all boils down to these characters. So
Right.
Are there any characters that for you stood out, whether you love them or you hate them, that you keep thinking about now after having seen the movie?
So I'm gonna give you two, one that I love and one that I love to hate, right? So I'm gonna start with who I love, and that was Steph. I thought that Steph was an absolutely incredible character who, while she had the least familial relationship ties in the movie, we get just enough information to understand why that is an important part of her character. Her parents are in Mexico. She was just dropped off at this, at this school, and she's trying to get together with them for Christmas, and she can't. And she's obviously the weird artsy kid at her school. She's really she's a reporter. And she's trying to do this article about the homeless problem that they have, and it keeps getting shot down. But she is a character that we see a lot of development out of, from just being kind of this hard-nosed reporter chick at the beginning to somebody who you eventually, and the first time you see her with a group of friends, she still seems like she's odd man out, right? There's the girl and her best friend, and then there's the boyfriend and girlfriend, and then there's Steph. And
she's also not a native to Northern England. I don't think it says where they're from, but they all have like a Northern English accent.
Yes.
She's got an American accent, so she's not English.
And she says like that her parents dropped her off, or that her parents moved her to a new continent and unloaded her as soon as they could, and then left. And so, but she's just this great hard-edged chick, with their cool short haircut, and
that is the cool girl haircut.
Yeah, it really is, right? And she's got a great voice. I mean, hell of a set of pipes on her. And when we get to the songs, I'll talk about some of that. But I thought that she was a really well-developed character. Most of them were. But she was who drew my eye. She was who I was fascinated by. Who I was the most invested in surviving was Steph. So that was the one that I really loved. And then the one that I hate, but I love to hate him, like in wrestling, we call him a heel, right? Just so good at being bad. It's Savage, man. Savage had this killer Johnny Rotten vibe.
He did.
Down to it. Didn't have great teeth. And then when he finally gets his songs, it sounded like something off of a B-side from Nevermind the Bollocks, right? It was just, It was a guy who was obsessed with becoming the headmaster because all he wanted was power. That was it. And when he eventually can't have power, over the students and the parents when the zombie horde starts moving into the school. He becomes an all-out villain. We eventually find out he's the one who opened the doors and let the zombies in because the people wouldn't listen to him. They wanted to leave. He blows the whistle to get the zombies' attention and attract them to Anna and her friends while he's hiding cowardly behind this grate in the lunchroom. He was such a good bad guy. And what was really, really great about Savage was there was never a redeeming moment for him.
Ever.
And sometimes it's really nice when you have, especially in something like this that is so tropey, that when you have a villain who just stays a villain. You know, I was okay with never finding out that that he had some sort of inferiority complex because his parents treated him awfully or whatever because he was never as good as his older brother. I was good with it. Man, this dude's a dick. Like, and that just carried his character. And the guy who played him did it so well. He obviously hated children. One of those people who has just been in the education system too long that they don't care anything about kids, and they actually dislike kids so much that the only thing they want to do is reach a position where they can punish kids, which is where he seemed to be. And it was nice that he never stopped being that. I never had to feel bad for anything that happened to him. I was allowed to just hate him from the very first moment I saw him until that star sweeps him right off the stage and he gets eaten alive. So those were my two. What about you, man?
Everything about him was fantastic because he starts off as like, you don't exactly know how to read him because he's very soft-spoken and he's very prim and proper. You know, the remove your tongues line, you know, from at the very beginning, like it's he seems almost like a Miss Hannigan from Annie, you know, where, you know, he's just like, he's gonna rule with an iron fist, but you don't know the length to which his douchebaggery is going to go. And everything from like the way his hair is combed to like the extreme right angles that his beard is cut. I don't know if you picked up on this, but like I'm a fan of suits, and the cut of his suit is a military cut.
That I did not know.
So yeah, like it's the button stance is really high. The lapels are very, you know, small, and you know they very very severe. You know, it's a very military cut. Had you put some stripes on it,
right?
You know, and maybe some rope or something like that, like you would have immediately recognized it as like, oh, that's the colonel.
Okay.
You know? And I think it's even green. You know, it's like that brownish green. I got this like he's running the asylum. He's running the institution.
Very R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah, very R. Lee Ermey. So I loved him. He was definitely one of my favorite characters, and everything about it. You know, from the way that he portrayed it, his descent into madness, because we all know people like him,
right?
That like, you know, they get a taste of authority, a taste of power, and they would rather be master of nothing than to be no master at all.
Right.
And that's him in a nutshell. And particularly as an educator, you're an educator as well. I think that we've seen this in people who work in schools where it's like, I will be an administrator, whether I'm qualified to be, whether I know what I'm doing, whether I have the best of intentions. Like, I want power. I want authority, even if it's in this tiny little area, you know, this one little city block,
right?
Where it like, and it's only from like 8 o'clock to 2:30. That's it. But I guess some people are so small and feel so powerless that if they can't rule, then they have nothing.
Right.
And so I found his character to be incredibly deep and incredibly profound in what they were trying to do and say with him, in the same way where a character like Rhodes is in Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
And in fact, I even got little hints of Rhodes when he died, when he gets hit by the star and he swings out into the zombie audience, right? He gets pulled apart, and the shot that they use, like the camera angle and all that, it's very reminiscent of Rhodes getting pulled apart by the zombies. I
didn't even think about that.
I
but you're
half
right.
expected him to say choke on him, you know. So he was definitely one of them for me. The other person that I really loved, I mean, Ella Hunt as Anna Shepherd was fantastic. She was great, amazing voice. I didn't bother to look up her age. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, she's super hot. So I just got verification. She's super hot. And she's fantastic. But the one for me that aside from the principal or assistant principal was Malcolm Cumming as John.
Yeah.
I so much of my life I felt like him, where I just, no matter what I did, it was never enough, and when I finally like got lucky and got the girl, I felt like that was like the beginning of the second part of my life.
Right.
And so like I sympathized with him because I've been there. I've been that guy where I'm like, I'm the nice guy and I'm always gonna take the high road and I'm always gonna do the right thing. And I still feel that way sometimes, where it's like I take the high road, I do the right thing, and yet I still feel like the bad guy won. And so I understand that frustration, but still never letting it get to you where you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna stop being the nice guy.
Right.
So I really liked his character because he really did, I think, embody that like nice guy.
Yeah, John was really interesting because he never, a lot of times when you get these roles of the nice guy friend who wants the girl, it ends up devolving into something where the dude just turns into a douche when he can't.
Right.
And they did a really good job with this, where John, eventually came to that realization and didn't let it affect how much he loved Anna. Even if that was never going to go anywhere, even if the depth of his love was always going to be one-sided, he just kind of established kind of the opposite of what you were saying with Savage, where he'd rather be the master of nothing than not the master at all. He came to the understanding of, I would rather, just be this girl's best friend if that's what she wants me to be, than dwell on the fact that I was hoping it was going to become something more. And they did a really good job with that. And that dude was a really what his name was
John Cumming.
Yeah.
Malcolm Cumming.
Malcolm Cumming. He was, like he had that. It's like that Hugh Grant face, right? Where it's real unassuming, but also it's like, I mean, he's not a bad looking guy. Like, of course he could get a girl, and he played that real, I don't know if dainty's the right word, just that kind of mousy dude role real well. He played that, he wanted to get, he tried to puff out his chest when Nick was being Nick, really. Yeah. And, but immediately just kind of was like, yeah, no, that's not me. We didn't have to see some sort of character development where suddenly he's a tough guy and he's swinging on somebody else and all this, which was refreshing.
The thing is that I think like he's physically more imposing than Nick.
Yeah.
Because he was taller, more barrel chested. And I think generally in his life probably has a bit more swagger.
Yeah.
There was something about the way that he occasionally carried himself where maybe like he forgot that he was supposed to be that guy. So for him to be able to portray that like more, you know, the more meek, the more like demure guy, that to me that says something about his acting ability.
Yeah, and also kind of credit to the costuming department and things like that, because they dressed them specifically to make you remember which role they were in.
Right.
Like I always joke about the fact that on the show Big Bang Theory, that they as the show developed, and Bernadette Melissa Ranch, I think is her name, as she became a more consistent part of the cast, they always seem to go out of their way to dress her frumpy just because they always wanted eyes on Kaylee Cuoco.
Right.
And it would have been real easy to take your eyes off of Kaylee Cuoco and put them on Melissa Roch if they had not dressed her that way. And I think that the same thing kind of happened here. It's like, oh, we're going to put this dude in just the dorkiest Christmas sweater. Right. And we're going to make sure it's bulky. Cause I think you're right. Like, I think if we'd seen that dude in like a slim cut t-shirt, I think it would have been like, well, maybe you're making the wrong choice, Anna.
Yeah, you throw him in like a white t-shirt, jeans, and a leather jacket, and all of a sudden, you know, he's
Battle
a
for
jet.
Supremacy right there. He's a jet, yeah.
He's a jet, and I don't fuck around with jets. You know,
that's so good. It's only enhanced by the fact that Nick was ethnic of some sort, and he could very easily have been a shark.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely got something there, you know, because he's got the blue eyes, but he's got that, you know, kind of like milk chocolate skin.
Yeah. There's like an olive skin tone there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ashamed or afraid to say it. He's a gorgeous looking man.
He is.
Yeah, he caught my eye. I looked over at my sister and I saw her looking at him, and I was like, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah, and you know, and speaking of Nick, kind of honorable mention to him, because the actor who played Nick, Ben Wiggins, he showed maybe the most breadth of character that we saw out of anybody. You know, the very first time that we see this guy, he just wants to hook up with Anna over Christmas break, and what
a douchey introduction.
Oh,
I mean, it was kind of incredible.
Yes.
The level of douche that was there. Like, I can be a douchebag sometimes,
right?
And how incredibly bougie I can be. Like, I'll say something and I don't even notice that it's like incredibly entitled sounding,
right?
You know, and I think I don't think I've ever said anything quite like that.
Yeah, dude, that was just, I mean, that was next level douche. And then the next thing we get is just him with the obscene cunnilingus hand gestures, if you will, from across the cafeteria. And it's like, this dude, oh my, like you hated this dude.
Yeah.
And then he shows up and he gets his great, like, it was one of the jockiest songs ever in like a musical, right? Just this when it comes to killing zombies on the top of my class, you know, like that whole thing. Just it was a Bon Jovi song, man. I mean, it was so fucking good. And so we get this introduction to him. It's like, man, this dude ain't shit but bravado and machismo, and he's so annoying. And then around the time when he loses his friends in the Christmas tree farm, you start to get a new feel for him. And then the way that actor delivered that little monologue about having to kill his dad, man.
Yeah.
And like when he's like,
there was something there.
And he gave me the bat and he said, you know, don't let me down for once. And it was like, and for where I was as excited as I was about not getting any development out of Savage and just letting him be a jack off, like it was it made the movie and this character, that was such a great little addendum to this character of Nick, where now suddenly it's like, oh man, okay, like I get it. And it's not to that extent, but anybody with parents knows what it's like to let your parents down just once. And so to hear that a dad said, for once, don't let me down. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And and that dude he just kills that spot in the movie. And it was so, so good. It's amazing how well all these people that I've never heard of did such a great job in all of these roles, really.
Yeah. And to me, there was, I don't think it was a direct link back to it, but there was a sense that, like, I'm a big fan of John Hughes movies.
Oh, yeah, because you're a man of taste.
Thank you. I love Pretty in Pink, and there was
I'm a 16 Candles guy, but I get it.
Admittedly so. 16 Candles is better than Pretty.
Oh, okay.
But the reason why I'm going with Pretty in Pink here is because a lot of people didn't like the ending where she ended up with Blaine instead of Ducky.
Yeah.
And in fact, John Hughes didn't like it either.
Oh my God, this movie is Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, right. It's the whole reason why he made Some Kind of Wonderful,
right?
Because he did agree with the audience and not the studio that she should have ended up with Ducky. And if you've ever seen the two movies back to back, they're pretty much the same movie.
Yeah.
Except she ends up with the Ducky character in Some Kind of Wonderful. I can't remember what he calls him in Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah, I don't either.
But that's what this was, where it was like, listen, man, you're Ducky, and unfortunately, you're not going to get the girl.
Right.
Blaine's going to get the girl. But here I like how it's like they leave it kind of open.
Yeah.
Where there's this sense where I feel like they're almost happy that they feel like they're going to die together there before Steph comes in and, she's like, get in, losers. We're going to the mall. It was like, I love that scene where it's like, did you forget about me? Like I told you, I was going to go get the keys to my car. I'm here for you.
It's speaking of just scenes that fit into any zombie movie, just perfectly, man. That all is lost moment where that character that you haven't seen for a little bit that you kind of forgot about and don't know if they made it show up and save the day, dude. Yeah, right there. That's zombie movie 101.
And as long as we're talking about zombie movie tropes, I would love to see more zombies using the bathroom. It's not a trope yet, but I would love for that to become a trope because Steph getting peed on by a granny zombie.
Oh my God.
What a great fucking moment. And she's like, it's warm.
Yes. So speaking of the zombies, I mean, in a section that we're gonna call, man, I shouldn't have picked even the Grand Guignol.
I was surprised you did. Hey, you got it. Yeah.
You can call this movie a lot of things. You can call it theater of violence. You can call it a zombie musical. I mean, call it whatever you want. But I mean, is the gore and the zombie effects and the violence effective? Is it satisfactory? Did you like what you saw?
I really did like what I saw, which I think is becoming increasingly hard to find in modern horror. I feel like modern horror movies are either like not afraid to pull their punches, like an Ari Aster movie or something like that, or they're gonna pull away before the money shot.
Like the Candyman remake.
Exactly. Where it's like, I came for the hardcore, but you edited for softcore. and somewhere, there was a disconnect, and that's okay because you made a movie that you wanted to see, but I came to see a movie I wanted to see.
Right.
And fuck, the money shots are here.
Yeah.
I don't think that that the movie is lousy with gore, the way that some zombie movies are, because like Shaun of the Dead is fucking gory.
Yes.
And so I think you can be funny and gory at the same time. Um, Return of the Living Dead, I think, is another perfect example of a zombie comedy where like it does not hold back on the violence. And I think that because the zombies were not the focus of this,
Right.
I was okay with the fact that the gore and the violence and the zombie gooiness was there occasionally.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it was happening all the time. Nick's musical number, obviously, I mean, there's zombie gore galore. The bowling alley scene, lots of zombie gore. There's lots of great zombie moments where like you see the zombie shuffling around in the teacher's lounge, which I thought was a great pun for what a teacher's lounge normally looks like.
Yes.
Because we're all in there, we're shuffling around, and like not one of them was holding a cup of coffee, and that's why there's zombies.
Exactly.
Um
It's all that gets me through sometimes.
Yeah, it's the only thing that does. It's the only thing that does. And then the knowledge that I'm gonna come home and there's a little something else
Right.
that's waiting for me. So I think that there was an appropriate amount of zombie violence here. Definitely was not let down. The very first zombie kill with decapitating Frosty
with the seesaw.
with
the seesaw.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And then to see the head there, like with the goo coming out of it, and he's just like, "Rawr,
and
rawr."
Anna's still in denial that it's even a zombie, and it's just a head that's sitting there like gnashing its teeth and mumbling.
And John's just like, but come on, it's a zombie. Look at it. And she doesn't want to admit it. I mean, it's great. I think most of the kills led to humorous moments, which for a zombie comedy, that's what you want. And I loved it. I loved what was there.
I was not disappointed in this because there was an equal amount of realistic zombie kills, things that were just really gross, savage, getting gutted at the end. Like once he hits the floor, I mean, they did a great job of keeping we were talking about the using every dime just perfectly. The camera's far enough away that he's in the middle of this huge scene going on. So we can't nitpick and compare it to somebody getting pulled in half in Day of the Dead. Right. But it's center screen and big enough that you can see the big open cavity in his stomach and you can see all the entrails coming out and that stuff. I mean, that was incredible. The bites were all very realistic. I did really like whenever somebody got bit, it was never this idea of some sort of ravenous zombie just tearing into their flesh. It was like, oh, there's flesh in my mouth now, so I should bite. You get that great moment where John just is spreading his hands out, walking backwards, and his hand literally just lands in a zombie's mouth. So it bites. And you get him pulling away. There's not much there. But then, man, when they did go for it, the double bowling ball smash.
Ooh, that might be the kill of the week, as it were.
Yes, double bowling ball smash. The head, like the hole blows perfectly out of the back of this guy's head. That one was so good. And I love that they kind of played fast and loose with how much head trauma you had to do to kill him. You know, and some of them Steph taking the spatula and jamming it up through the guy. And then it's like, oh, he's dead. But then he comes back. It's like, she must have missed his brain. That whole thing. But then there are times when you get the quantity over quality, like Nick and his minions. When they finally got their moment to shine. Right. And this is what they were born to do. And they're just he's got like a pipe and a baseball bat at one point. There's the dude who just smashes the watermelon, and they do a great job.
The watermelon just splashes
the watermelon
back in his
sprays
face.
over his face. Yes, we don't actually see how much damage the watermelon does, but that was straight out of, I mean, Shaun of the Dead, when they're just arming themselves with whatever they have, right? And so they did a good job of knowing when to show a lot and when to show less.
Mm-hmm.
And that was impressive because like you said, I mean, this movie, obviously a passion project. I don't know what the budget was, but according to Wikipedia, it made less than $700,000 in the box office.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they couldn't have assumed it was going to make a ton of money. So you've got to figure that it's got a shoestring budget, and they really used it. I mean, they squeezed that quarter and made it $1, man.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing with all these shots, and they made every single one of them count. John McPhail was the director of this one, and I was kind of looking through some of his other stuff, and I don't really know any of it, but he definitely kind of he knew what he was doing when he came through with some of these shots and how they were going to do them. So I think you're right. I think that the gore we got was super effective. I think that we got just enough really gory stuff to satisfy that hardcore zombie movie fan that we are. And there was, like I said, I was still living off the double bowling ball smash until I got to see Savage gutted, and I was like, all right, yeah, now I'm good. Now, like, we have officially checked. Like at that point, the only box that wasn't checked was the all is lost scene, and we got that right. So they did some fun. The seesaw, remarkably creative.
Yeah.
The just all of it was good. I liked it a lot. I thought that it was gory when it needed to be gory and not when it didn't need to be, and I was impressed by that.
And inventive, like he said, with the seesaw and the watermelon. I mean, there's certain things that are old hat, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna watch and I'm not gonna enjoy seeing a zombie get taken down by, I don't know, like a crowbar or something.
Right.
But when I do get to see a zombie be decapitated by a seesaw, I pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, it's like how often do you see a new kill in a movie? It's very rare because so many of them have been done. You know, the first time someone had a pair of scissors rammed down their throat, which I think might have been Torso in the late 70s or early 80s. That was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. But then they did it again in Halloween 2, and they did it again in a couple other movies, and like, yeah, okay, you know, it happens.
Right.
You know, but it's like, you know, how many times have you seen someone get murdered by garden shears?
Yeah.
The burning, maybe that's it, you know? So anytime you see something that's new, that's out there, or that simply isn't done very often, you don't see very many people murdered by fruit in horror movies. And I'm here for it. I'm here for the fruit murder.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, and it's, you know, as much as we've talked about Shaun of the Dead, you'll never convince me that Nick finding that croquet bat and that becoming his new thing wasn't a direct homage to the fact that they were like, we love Shaun of the Dead, and we were like, what if we add music to it, right? I mean, like, because he finds that croquet bat and he's sitting it, and he decides to put down his metal bat, and it's like, yeah, okay, I get it, right? You get it, I get it. This is great.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Another thing I was okay with is the focus of our next and final segment before we get into ratings, which is something that I am calling affectionately Singing in the Raining Blood.
I love it. So
because as a fan of classic Hollywood musicals like Singing in the Rain and heavy metal bands like Slayer, there's nothing I love more than like hard-hitting horror and hard-hitting music.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that the music in this movie did not disappoint. Every song was a fucking banger.
I agreed.
And I like some more than others, but there's not one where I could say, yeah, that was the one that I'll skip over when I listen to the soundtrack later. And in fact, today that's what I did on my drive to work and my drive back. I listened to the soundtrack and I didn't skip a single one.
Right.
So how'd you feel about the music? Do you feel like it fit the movie, right? Not as a musical, but as like we've said countless times, a zombie comedy holiday musical.
Right.
Does the music fit? And is there a song that for you is like the standout?
So, for very different reasons, two songs really stand out for me.
Okay.
Strictly from a musical standpoint, I think that Breakaway was done amazingly.
Yeah.
When you look at music and as songwriting as storytelling, I think that Breakaway did so much to establish these characters of John, Anna, and Steph very early in the movie. I think that it really showcased how well each one of them can sing. And that song gave me chills. Like when that song started playing, that was when I knew I was like, I'm going to listen to this soundtrack. Like this is going to be something that I'm going to play. They did a really, I'm such a sucker for musicals in general, like you. And I love that moment when people that are not in the same space are harmonizing that you can pull off, with the movie. It's one of those standout things from a musical that always makes me happy. I love when people in very different places are perfectly harmonizing. And the three of them absolutely killed that song. That song was like I said, great for establishing their characters, but it broke my heart for Steph. And then you kind of see you start to see the full extent of the fact that John is obviously this dude who gets bullied and stuff during that. And you get this idea of Anna just needing to be somewhere else because there's so many bad memories tied to this place since this is where her mom died. So, Breakaway, I thought was just incredible. And then the one that stands out, it was a great song, but that stands out strictly because of its place in the movie was Turning My Life Around, which is the song that John and Anna are singing when they come out of their house the day that the apocalypse kind of starts.
Yeah.
Because again, perfect homage to
Everything
Shaun
going
of
on
the
around
Dead.
them.
Yes, and they are completely oblivious to everything that is going on. They've got their headphones in, they're singing their song about how this is going to be such a great day and they're going to turn their life around. And this is the first time when we actually see the world going to shit around them. So that dichotomy of that song with that moment and just how uplifting that song is while you're watching zombies, get people out of their houses and the cars just rolling into the street and neither of them have any idea what's going on. By itself, it's a fine song, but when put into that scene, it is raised to an entirely different level because you can enjoy the song, but it is just so damn funny that it is happening in that moment. So those are the two for me.
So I really like Breakaway. I think that might be the best written song. I think you hit the nail on the head there. For me though, if I had to pick like a favorite, it'd probably be between two. I really like Hollywood Ending.
Yeah.
And partly because I feel like, and maybe this was an homage to that movie, but man, I've never been ashamed before on this show. And I'm not saying I'm ashamed now, but did you ever see High School Musical?
I have seen one of the High School Musicals, just the very first one.
The very first one. Okay. I have unfortunately seen them all. And although I couldn't tell you anything about that third one, I do like the first one and the second one.
Okay.
They're guilty pleasures, if you will. They're not the sort of things that I rewatch or anything like that. But if
Right.
if I go over and my sister has it on, I'll watch. If I come home and the wife has it on, I'll watch. And I'm gonna complain because I feel like I need to, but I actually do want to sit down and watch the thing. And there's this great.
This again. I better
Yeah.
sit down.
I can't believe you like this shit.
Oh my god! Anyway,
I'm gonna sit here with my scotch and my cigar, and I'm just gonna scoff at this. And then on the inside, I'm like, we're breaking free. So there's this great cafeteria scene in High School Musical that I feel like that was an homage to.
Yeah, I immediately was like, "Oh, it's High School Musical."
And yeah, man, and I think it was like a hard reference to High School Musical, in the same way that I really do believe that Steph driving up in her car, saving them at the end, was a reference to Mean Girls when Regina George drives up in
Right.
her is it a cabriolet or something like that? I don't know. And she's like, get in, losers. To me, that's what that scene was.
Right.
And if you are making a movie that takes place in high school, like, you have to reference those classics, like I didn't really pick up on any Clue or Porky's or anything like that, but maybe it's just because that was
zombie dong sticking through a hole in the wall.
Oh yeah, Porky's. Sorry. You said dong, and I thought you were talking about Long Duck Dong.
Oh
from,
no, yeah,
from
no,
16
Porky's.
Candles. Yeah. 16 Candles is another one right there.
Yeah.
So I love that song, that number, because it's absurd, the slamming the trays down and turning around and being all dramatic. It was very, very musical to me. That's the one of the numbers that felt most like a classic Hollywood musical.
Right.
And uninterestingly, or unsurprisingly rather, my second choice is Soldier at War, which also is very Hollywood musical in presentation.
Yeah.
But the song itself is like a classic 80s like glam metal song.
Yeah.
I referenced Bon Jovi before. Like, it sounds like Bon Jovi. If it was John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora, I would not have been surprised. and it's just like, it's a really good song, but also like it shows you that bravado that Nick has. Like, he has this cult that follows him. Like, it's not just that he's so sure of himself that he'll be like, hey, if you want, my dick's available. He's not just that level of douche. Like, everyone wants to be around this guy,
right?
For some reason. Yeah. And we all know people like this, where you hate the guy, but the moment that he says like, hey, you want to split a bag of Doritos or something, you're like, yeah, no, I haven't had Takis in years, but I'll have some Takis with you. It's the strangest thing, that guy, but and Nick plays it really, really well. So I think that those two for me are the standout songs. I mean, there's a bunch. Like I said, I don't think there's a bad song in this playbook, but
oh yeah, dude, Nothing's Gonna Stop Me Now, Malcolm's Savage's song. Like I said, you were talking about,
it sounds like a Sex Pistols
like a
song.
Sex Pistols song. Yeah, just like how you were saying Soldier at War sounds like a Bon Jovi song, man. And just the way he moves and everything, man, that dude channeled Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
Like, he was feeling it, and it was so good. And like I said, and it was also great because he didn't have an amazing singing voice like everyone else in this had. And they found a song that showcased what he could do perfectly, just like the Sex Pistols. Johnny Rotten's voice was trash.
And Sid Vicious too. I mean, when your backup guy isn't, the greatest You work with what you have.
You work with what you have, and they had this guy who can play the role so perfectly, doesn't sing that well. Great, we're gonna get this dude a song that's gonna make sense. And he had so much fun singing it. He just killed that moment where you were very aware of, like we talked about earlier, how important power was to him. And then the next song, I think it was give him a show.
Mhm.
where it's kind of a back and forth between him and Anna, so they did a great job of showcasing how different their voices were. And that was always really cool. It was, I talked at the top about how none of this felt shoehorned in. And it didn't feel like they just went and added songs to this movie to make it something different. The songs in this movie were a labor of love. It's when we did Rocky Horror, we talked about how they started with the songs and then built a show around them. You get that feeling from this movie. And just the last one, the song that the girl does about Santa Claus, it's that time of year, oh my God, it was so funny. It was so funny. It was Santa Baby.
It was very Santa Baby.
It was the XXX version of Santa Baby. And it was so funny. And it was so hilarious to then put it in this scene of a high school talent show type thing, especially right after that the Penguins rapping about fish.
Oh man, what a fucking performance. And to see them again at the end of the movie and they're zombies, I was happy to see them again.
And it was the first song that played when the credits started rolling. It was like that. And the fact that in the same movie, you have this song about fish and you have this song Breakaway, shows the fact that this obviously was always going to be a musical from the jump. And there's so much love poured into all of those songs. It was so good. And yeah, you're right. We might be the pinpoint of where all of these movies overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody else decides to do it now, man, it's one hell of a high bar.
It absolutely is. It
and
really is.
So speaking of how high the bar is, all that's left is for us to rate this thing. And we always like to remind you that on this show, we only rate a movie against itself. So we will not be rating Anna the Apocalypse against all of the other musical zombie Christmas movies that are just rolling around in your head right now.
Or will we?
That you desperately want us to compare it to. And so in order to rate each movie solely on its own merits, we create a unique rating system for each movie. And for this week, we have decided to go with, out of a possible 5 decapitated Frosty the Snowmans, what do you give Anna and the Apocalypse?
I've gone back and forth on this because I have to remember that we're rating a movie against itself and not against anything else. And the logic part of my brain says that's not right. You give movies like Night of the Living Dead perfect scores. And we've never done Night of the Living Dead, but that's my score for it, by the way. All right.
Fair.
So how can you give this a 5 out of 5? But we're not doing stars.
Right.
We're doing Decapitated Frosty the Snowman. And because we're doing Decapitated Frosty the Snowman, I have to give it 5, man. I fucking love this movie. I, from the jump, thought this is a new movie that I have to throw into my rotation.
Right.
Because it not only feels like a Christmas movie, it feels like a zombie movie, and it feels like a musical, and it feels like it is 100% all the things that are in there. So these like disparate parts don't add up to 100%.
Right.
These disparate parts are 100% in themselves. And so this movie ends up being like 400% what it is. That doesn't math, but we don't math here on Shiver, a ho-ho horror movie podcast.
Oh, well played.
So because of that, this movie is 400% awesome. And because of that, this movie is 5 out of 5. Decapitated Frosty the Snowman. What about you?
Man, I can't disagree with a single thing you said. And I think the beauty of the rating system that we do is I don't need this to be as good as Day of the Dead to get 5 out of 5. Because this movie didn't want to be Day of the Dead.
Right.
This movie didn't want to be, 28 days later. This movie wanted to be Anna of the Apocalypse. And it's so beautifully and perfectly Anna and the Apocalypse. You're right. Everything in this is done to the nth degree. These songs are really good and the people singing them are excellent. And, you were talking about amps and guitars earlier. A good singer can make a bad song great and a bad singer can make a good song terrible. Yeah. And what we got good songs sung by good singers. We got just enough special effects that made sense in this movie, just enough violence and gore. It was realistic when it had to be. It was cartoony when it had to be. We got just enough of a story that I was compelled. I wanted them to get there. We get touching moments. There's, when we were talking about characters, we didn't even mention Chris and his girlfriend.
Yeah. And they were fantastic.
Yeah. And they get that Chris and Lisa. And they were great. And they spend the whole movie trying to get back together. And ultimately, now they're together forever. Right. And we get this really,
it was almost poetic.
It was. And we get this really touching scene where after they're zombies, but their hands just kind of brush and maybe they kind of grab a little bit. They did all of these things that make it a great zombie movie. And there was a great villain. And again, reminded that in a situation like this, it's not about surviving the zombies. It's about surviving other people. All of these things that are decades old tropes, it did them all well. It didn't try to do something spectacularly new in the zombie film genre. It tried to do something spectacularly new in the film genre.
Yeah.
And just creating something like I've never seen before. And when I think about all of those things, there's no way I can't give this 5 out of 5 Decapitated Frosty the Snowman. It was just, like I said, it was so perfectly Anna and the Apocalypse. I was left thinking the same thing. Like, yeah, every Christmas now, this is going to be one that I'm going to watch. And I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to listen to the soundtrack. And by the next time I watch it, I'll be singing along as it's on the TV.
And that's the thing is, I think that the movie, because it doesn't lean so heavy in the gore, and because there's nothing overtly sexual about the movie either, right? Because so often horror movies find that excitement in the nudity and the exposing everything, for better or for worse. It kind of almost feels like a family movie, because it is so much about families coming together. I today was about to put it on for my 8-year-old who loves zombie movies. Like, he is a huge fan of Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Like, he loves Dawn of the Dead. Flyboy is like one of his favorite movie characters. He cries every time he turns into a zombie. I know that he would love this movie. I absolutely know that he would love this movie. We didn't put it on because I had forgotten we'd already started like some Studio Ghibli movie from a couple years ago. We started it yesterday and I forgot about it. He was like, no, we got to keep watching Porco Rosso. And I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Nice.
You can't go wrong. No. What is it? Miyazaki? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just brilliant. So if he ever decided to do a horror movie, you best believe it would be the best fucking horror movie of all time.
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
Yeah. So there you go. Anna and the Apocalypse. It's perfect. It's
Yeah.
5 out of 5 decapitated Frosty the Snowman. And that's not all, because next week we'll be back with another maybe Christmas classic ? We like to change it up here.
We do. We like to keep you on your toes. And so sometimes, sometimes it's one that we know we're gonna love. Sometimes it's one like this where we're surprised and we love it. And sometimes it's Santa's Sleigh that we will be doing next week with WWE superstar Bill Goldberg.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to watch the movie.
Me too.
Yeah. And we have a guest lined up for it, a very special guest who is very near and dear to the podcast, and hopefully it works out, and there's no cancellations here, because I think that he really is the perfect person to come on and review this movie.
Yeah. So just make sure you keep an eye on all of our social medias. Of course, if you head to shiverpod.com, you can find links to everywhere that we are. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, all at ShiverPod. So if you search at ShiverPod on any of those things, you can find us. We try to keep our Instagram going with horror movie memes. We let you know what movie's coming up. We've got, like I said, we've got Santa's Sleigh next week. Then we're going to take a couple weeks off, but we've got something really special for January that we're going to be announcing in a little while.
Very excited about that.
And so make sure you follow us on all of those places at ShiverPod. And I think I said this last week, but if you're wondering what we might want for Christmas, share an episode, tell a friend. Get the word out there, because that's how we live and breathe. We see those numbers growing, so we know that some of you guys are out there doing it, and we appreciate it. To any of our new listeners, I know we've picked up a couple people that from on our Instagram, been communicating with some people, and so we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're getting listeners from literally all over the world. We can see this when we look at our metrics and stuff, and so to our new listeners coming at us from Pakistan. Hi, welcome.
Hot damn.
Yeah, we've got listeners from everywhere. To our few Australian listeners who are still listening, good day, mate. Because it's morning over there now.
Correct.
Yeah. So happy Christmas to all of you. Under the king's eye, as it were. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.